You've been lied to about debt. Your whole life, you've been told that all debt is bad, that if you're in debt, you're failing, that the goal is to be completely debt-free no matter what. And because of this lie, you're making financial decisions that are keeping you poor. Meanwhile, wealthy people are using debt to build empires, and you don't even understand how. Here's the truth that nobody wants to tell you. Debt is a tool. Like any tool, it can build or it can destroy. A hammer can build a house or crack a skull. The tool isn't good or bad. How you use it determines everything. Today, I'm going to show you the difference between good debt and bad debt. I'm going to break down credit cards, car loans, student loans, and investment leverage. And by the end of this video, you're going to understand why most people are using debt completely wrong and how the wealthy are using it completely right. This isn't feel-good advice. This is the brutal truth about how money actually works. Before we dive into specific types of debt, you need to understand the fundamental rule that separates good debt from bad debt. It's simple, but most people miss it completely. Here it is. If debt puts money in your pocket over time, it's potentially good debt. If it takes money out of your pocket over time, it's dangerous debt. That's it. That's the rule. Everything else is just application of this principle. Let me explain what this means. Good debt is debt used to acquire assets that generate income or appreciate in value faster than the cost of the debt. The asset you buy with the debt pays for itself and then some. Bad debt is debt used to acquire liabilities that lose value and cost you money to maintain. The thing you buy with the debt becomes a drain on your finances. Here's a simple example. You take out a loan for $200,000 at 4% interest to buy a rental property. The mortgage payment is about $1,000 a month. You rent it out for $1,500 a month. After expenses, you clear $200 a month positive cash flow, and the property is appreciating at 3% a year. This debt is putting money in your pocket every single month. Plus, your tenant is paying down your mortgage for you. Plus, the property is growing in value. This is good debt. The asset purchased with the debt generates returns that exceed the cost of the debt. Now, same $200,000 loan at 4% interest, but you use it to buy a luxury car. Your payment is still around $1,000 a month, but the car generates zero income. It loses value every single month. It costs you money in insurance, gas, maintenance, and repairs. This debt is taking money out of your pocket every single month, and the asset is depreciating. This is bad debt. The liability purchased with the debt costs you money and loses value. Same loan amount, same interest rate, completely different outcomes based on what you use the debt to purchase. This is why the blanket statement that all debt is bad is wrong. Debt used to acquire assets can accelerate wealth building. Debt used to acquire liabilities accelerates poverty. The debt itself is neutral. What matters is what you do with it. But here's where most people mess this up. They don't understand the difference between assets and liabilities. They think their car is an asset. It's not. They think their home is an asset. It's not, unless you're renting out part of it or it's appreciating faster than your carrying costs. Your primary residence that you live in is a liability. It takes money out of your pocket every month in the form of mortgage payments, property taxes, insurance, maintenance, and utilities. It might appreciate, which is good, but while you're living in it, it's costing you money. That's a liability. This fundamental misunderstanding causes people to take on massive amounts of what they think is good debt when it's actually bad debt. They buy expensive homes they can barely afford because they think it's an investment. They buy new cars on credit because they think they need reliable transportation. They finance furniture, electronics, vacations, all while thinking they're making smart financial decisions. They're not. They're drowning themselves in bad debt, and they don't even realize it. The wealthy understand this distinction. They use debt strategically to acquire income-producing assets. They minimize or eliminate debt on liabilities. When they do take on debt for liabilities, it's a tiny percentage of their net worth, and they could pay it off tomorrow if they wanted to. They're choosing to use debt because the alternative use of that capital generates better returns. Poor people use debt to buy things they can't afford and don't need.
Wealthy people use debt to buy assets that make them richer. Same tool, completely different application. Let's start with credit cards because this is where most people destroy themselves financially. Credit cards are the perfect example of a tool that can be used for good or for catastrophic harm. The average American has about $6,000 in credit card debt at an interest rate of around 20%. Do the math. That's $1,200 a year just in interest. Money thrown away for nothing. This is bad debt at its worst. Here's how most people use credit cards. They buy things they can't afford. Dinner out, new clothes, a TV, whatever. They tell themselves they'll pay it off, but they don't. The balance grows, they make minimum payments that mostly go to interest. Years pass. The original purchases are long forgotten or worn out, but the debt remains. They're still paying for things they no longer have or use. This is financial suicide. If you're carrying a balance on credit cards and paying interest, you need to stop using them immediately and focus everything on paying them off. There is no investment that will reliably beat 20% returns, so paying off high-interest credit card debt is the best investment you can make. But here's the thing, credit cards themselves aren't evil. They're actually powerful tools when used correctly. The wealthy use credit cards very differently than poor people. They use them for 3 reasons: convenience, rewards, and building credit. Let me break down each one. Convenience. Wealthy people use credit cards because they're safer and easier than cash. If your credit card is stolen, you call the company and you're not liable for fraudulent charges. If your cash is stolen, it's gone. Credit cards also track all your spending automatically, which helps with budgeting and taxes. They use credit cards for everything, but here's the key. They pay off the balance in full every single month. No interest, no debt. They're using the card as a payment method, not as a loan. Rewards. Most premium credit cards offer 1 to 5% cash back or points on purchases. If you're spending money anyway, why not get 1 to 5% back? Wealthy people optimize this. They put everything on credit cards to maximize rewards, then pay off the balance. They're essentially getting free money. Poor people pay interest that dwarfs any rewards they earn. Wealthy people earn rewards without paying a cent in interest. Same tool, opposite outcomes. Building credit. Your credit score affects the interest rates you get on mortgages, car loans, business loans, everything. A good credit score can save you tens of thousands of dollars over your lifetime. One of the factors in your credit score is credit utilization, which is how much of your available credit you're using. Wealthy people keep their utilization low by having high credit limits and paying off balances. They also have long credit histories because they've had credit cards for years or decades, always paying on time. This gives them access to the best interest rates when they want to use good debt to build wealth. So, are credit cards good debt or bad debt? It depends entirely on how you use them. If you carry a balance and pay interest, they're terrible debt, among the worst. If you pay off the balance every month and earn rewards, they're not debt at all. They're a tool that makes you money. The card itself hasn't changed. Your behavior determines whether it helps you or destroys you.
Here's what you need to do. If you have credit card debt, stop using the cards. Cut them up if you have to. Make a plan to pay them off as fast as possible. Pay minimums on everything except the card with the highest interest rate. Throw every extra dollar at that one until it's gone, then move to the next highest rate. This is the avalanche method, and it saves you the most money in interest. Once you're debt-free, you can start using credit cards responsibly if you want to, but only if you can pay off the balance every month without exception. If you can't trust yourself to do that, don't use credit cards. Use a debit card. There's no shame in that. The shame is destroying your financial life because you can't control your spending. Credit cards amplify your behavior. If you have discipline, they make you money. If you don't, they ruin you. Be honest with yourself about which category you're in. Now let's talk about car loans, which are one of the biggest wealth destroyers for middle-class people. The average new car loan in America is around $40,000 at 5 to 7% interest for 6 years. The average payment is over $700 a month. And here's the brutal truth. A car is almost always bad debt. Why? Because cars are depreciating liabilities. The moment you drive off the lot, the car loses value. Over the next few years, it continues to lose value. Meanwhile, you're paying interest on something that's worth less every month. Let's run the numbers. You finance a $40,000 car for 6 years at 6% interest. Your monthly payment is $661. Over 6 years, you pay a total of $47,576. The car is now 6 years old and worth maybe $20,000. You've lost $27,576. That's the actual cost of that car, and that doesn't include insurance, gas, maintenance, and repairs, which easily add another $20,000 to $30,000 over 6 years. The true cost of that $40,000 car is probably close to $60,000. Now imagine you had bought a $10,000 reliable used car instead, something like a Honda Civic or a Toyota Corolla that's 5 to 7 years old. You pay cash, no loan, no interest. Your insurance is cheaper because it's not a new car. Maintenance is slightly higher, but nothing crazy if you chose well. Over 6 years, your total cost might be $15,000 including maintenance. You've saved $45,000 compared to the new car scenario. What if you invested that $700 monthly payment you're not making? 6 years at 7% returns gives you over $63,000. You still have a paid-off used car worth maybe $5,000. Your total position is $68,000 versus negative $20,000 in the new car scenario. That's an $88,000 difference from one decision, one car purchase. Multiply this over a lifetime of car purchases, and you're talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars in lost wealth. This is why car loans are wealth destroyers. They're always bad debt because cars are always depreciating liabilities. You're paying interest on something that's losing value. It's financial insanity, but everyone does it because it's normalized. Your coworker gets a new car, you feel like you should too. The commercials make it look affordable. 0 down, low monthly payments, everyone qualifies. They don't tell you that you're signing up to lose tens of thousands of dollars. But what about needing a reliable car for work? Yes, you need transportation. No, you don't need a new car. A 10-year-old Honda Civic is just as reliable as a new car if it's been maintained. Consumer Reports proves this every year. The idea that you need a new car for reliability is marketing, not reality. You need a reliable car. You can get that for $10,000 cash. You don't need a $40,000 loan. What if you don't have $10,000 cash? Then you buy a $5,000 car and save up to upgrade. You buy the cheapest reliable transportation you can find and you make it work until you've saved enough to pay cash for something better. What you don't do is finance a car you can't afford and trap yourself in payments for 6 years.
Now, are there ever situations where a car loan makes sense? Rarely. If you absolutely need a car for work, don't have cash, and can't make do with what you have, then maybe you finance a cheap, reliable used car with a short loan term, 3 years max, and you get the lowest interest rate possible. But you're still losing money on this deal. It's just damage control. The only time I've seen a car loan be somewhat defensible is for someone who needs a work vehicle that generates income, like a contractor who needs a truck for their business. And even then, they should buy used and minimize the loan amount. The vehicle is helping them make money, so it's less bad, but it's still a depreciating asset, so it's still not great. Here's the rule with cars. Buy the cheapest, reliable car that meets your needs. Pay cash if at all possible. If you must finance, keep it under $10,000 and pay it off in under 3 years. Never, ever finance a new car unless you're wealthy enough that it doesn't matter. And if you're wealthy enough that it doesn't matter, you probably understand money well enough to pay cash anyway. The wealthy buy used cars and drive them for 10 years, or they lease if they need a new car for business reasons and can write it off. But they don't finance depreciating assets with their own money. That's what broke people do. Don't be broke people. Student loans are more complicated than credit cards or car loans because education can be an investment in yourself that pays off, or it can be a massive waste of money. It depends entirely on what you study, where you study, how much you borrow, and what you do with the degree. Let's start with the good scenario. You borrow $30,000 to get a degree in engineering, nursing, computer science, or another high-demand field.
You graduate and get a job making $60,000 a year, which grows to $80,000 plus within a few years. Your loan payment is around $300 a month. This is manageable. The degree opened doors that increased your earning potential by $30,000 to $40,000 a year compared to not having a degree. Over your career, that's an extra $1 million or more. The $30,000 loan paid for itself many times over. This is good debt. You invested in an asset, yourself, that generates returns far exceeding the cost of the debt. Now, the bad scenario. You borrow $80,000 to get a degree in something with no clear career path and low earning potential. You graduate and struggle to find work in your field. You end up with a job making $35,000 a year that doesn't require a degree. Your loan payment is $800 a month, which is crippling on your salary. The degree did not increase your earning potential enough to justify the cost. This is bad debt. You took on massive debt to acquire something that doesn't generate sufficient returns. Here's the brutal truth about student loans. The education system has sold a lie that any degree from any school is worth any price. It's not. A degree is only worth the price if it increases your earning potential enough to pay for itself. If you're going to borrow $50,000 to get a degree, you better be confident that degree will help you earn at least $15,000 to $20,000 more per year than you would without it. Otherwise, the math doesn't work. This means you need to be strategic. What field are you studying? What's the average starting salary? What's the growth potential? How much are you borrowing? These questions need answers before you take on the debt, not after. Too many people borrow first and think later. That's backwards.
Let's run some numbers. Scenario 1. You go to a state school, live at home or with roommates, work part-time, and graduate with $25,000 in student loans. You studied something practical with good job prospects. You get a job making $55,000 a year. Your loan payment is around $280 a month. You can handle this. You pay it off in 10 years. Total interest paid is about $8,000. Total cost of borrowing, $33,000. Your increased earning potential from the degree over your career, probably over $1 million. Good debt. Scenario 2. You go to a private school across the country because it was your dream school. You borrow $70,000. You studied something you're passionate about but that has limited job prospects. You graduate and make $38,000 a year. Your loan payment should be $700 a month, but you can't afford that, so you go on income-driven repayment. You pay less each month, but interest continues to accrue. 20 years later, you've paid $50,000 toward the loans, but you still owe $60,000 because of accumulated interest. Your loans will eventually be forgiven, but that forgiveness is taxable income, so you'll owe taxes on it. Total cost? Probably close to $100,000 when you factor everything in. Your increased earning potential from the degree? Maybe $100,000 to $200,000 over your career, but much of that is eaten up by loan payments. This is questionable debt at best, possibly bad debt. The difference? The amount borrowed, the field of study, and the resulting earning potential. One led to wealth building, the other led to decades of financial stress. Here's what you need to know about student loans. They can be good debt if used correctly. That means borrowing the minimum necessary, studying something with strong earning potential, and graduating with a clear plan for employment. If you can go to community college for 2 years and transfer to a state school for 2 years, you can graduate with a bachelor's degree for a fraction of the cost of going to a university all 4 years. That's smart. Borrowing $80,000 for an out-of-state private school because you like the campus is dumb. Also, not everyone needs a 4-year degree. Trade schools, apprenticeships, and certifications can lead to 6-figure incomes with little to no debt. Electricians, plumbers, welders, HVAC technicians, these fields pay very well, often better than many jobs requiring degrees. If you're going into debt for education, make sure it's an education that pays off. If you already have student loans, understand what you have. Federal loans have protections and options that private loans don't.
Income-driven repayment, forbearance, forgiveness programs for public service, these exist for federal loans. Take advantage of them if you need to, but also make a plan to pay them off as fast as you reasonably can. The longer you drag them out, the more interest you pay. Should you prioritize paying off student loans over investing? It depends on the interest rate. If your rate is above 6 or 7%, pay them off aggressively. If it's below that, you might be better off making minimum payments and investing the difference, since stock market returns average higher than that over time. This is personal preference. Some people want the psychological freedom of being debt-free. Others want to optimize mathematically. Either approach can work. Bottom line on student loans, they're good debt if they increase your earning potential significantly more than they cost. They're bad debt if they don't. Do the math before you borrow, not after. Now we get to the type of debt that wealthy people use to build empires: investment leverage. This is borrowing money to invest in assets that generate returns exceeding the cost of the debt. Done correctly, this accelerates wealth building dramatically. Done incorrectly, it can wipe you out. This is good debt in the hands of people who understand it, and dangerous debt in the hands of people who don't. The most common form of investment leverage is a mortgage on a rental property. Here's how it works. You find a property worth $200,000 that rents for $2,000 a month. You put down 20%, $40,000, and borrow $160,000 at 4% interest. Your mortgage payment is around $765. Add in property taxes, insurance, and maintenance, and your total monthly cost is around $1,300. You're renting it for $2,000. You're making $700 a month in cash flow. That's $8,400 a year in cash flow on a $40,000 investment. That's a 21% cash-on-cash return. Plus, your tenant is paying down your mortgage, building equity for you. Plus, the property is likely appreciating. Plus, you get tax benefits from depreciation. Without leverage, you would need the full $200,000 to buy the property. Your cash flow would be higher, about $1,400 a month after expenses, but your cash-on-cash return would be only 8.4% on $200,000. With leverage, you're getting 21% on $40,000. You've more than doubled your return by using debt. This is the power of good debt. But here's the critical part. This only works if the property actually cash flows. If you buy a property that doesn't generate enough rent to cover all expenses, including the mortgage, you're not using good debt. You're gambling. You're betting that appreciation will bail you out. Sometimes it does. Sometimes it doesn't. In 2008, a lot of people using this strategy lost everything because they were buying properties that didn't cash flow, assuming prices would keep going up forever. They didn't. Prices crashed. Those people were foreclosed on. Good debt for investment purposes must meet strict criteria. The asset must generate income that exceeds all expenses, including the debt service. You must have reserves to handle vacancies and unexpected costs. You must have a conservative estimate of future appreciation, ideally assuming zero, so that anything you get is a bonus. If the deal only works with appreciation, it's not a good deal. If it works on cash flow alone and appreciation is extra, that's a good deal. The same principle applies to other forms of investment leverage. Some people borrow on margin to invest in stocks. This is risky because stocks are volatile. If the market drops, you can get a margin call and be forced to sell at a loss. If you don't understand exactly what you're doing, don't use margin. Even if you do understand it, use it sparingly and conservatively. Warren Buffett says he's never used leverage in his personal investing. If the best investor in history doesn't need leverage, you probably don't either. Leverage amplifies gains, but it also amplifies losses. Some people take out loans to start businesses. This can be good debt if the business generates enough profit to cover the loan payments and then some. But most small businesses fail. If you take out a loan for a business that fails, you still owe the money. This is why many successful entrepreneurs bootstrap, meaning they start with their own savings and reinvest profits rather than taking on debt. Less risk. If the business fails, they lose their investment but don't owe anyone. If you're going to borrow for a business, make sure you have a solid plan, proven demand for what you're selling, and the ability to generate revenue quickly. And never borrow more than you can afford to lose. Real estate investment trusts, REITs, use leverage extensively. They borrow money to buy properties, then use rental income to pay the debt and distribute profits to shareholders. This is good debt at a corporate level. As an individual investor buying REIT shares, you're benefiting from leverage without taking on the debt yourself, which can be a smart way to get exposure to real estate returns without the hassle of being a landlord. The key to using investment leverage successfully is conservative underwriting. That means you assume lower returns than you expect, higher expenses than you expect, and you make sure the deal still works. You don't count on everything going perfectly. You plan for things going wrong. You have reserves. You have backup plans. This is how wealthy people use debt to build wealth without destroying themselves. They're not gambling. They're making calculated investments with debt that generates returns exceeding the cost. Most people shouldn't use investment leverage until they have a solid financial foundation. That means no bad debt, an emergency fund, consistent income, and enough knowledge to evaluate investments properly. If you're still paying off credit cards and car loans, you have no business borrowing money to buy rental properties. Master the basics first. Then, when you're ready, investment leverage can be a powerful tool for building wealth faster. Now you understand the difference between good debt and bad debt. You understand that debt is a tool, and tools can be used well or poorly. So why do most people use debt completely wrong? Why are the majority of people drowning in bad debt, while the wealthy are using good debt to build fortunes? There are a few key reasons. First, financial illiteracy. Most people were never taught the difference between assets and liabilities. They don't understand cash flow. They don't understand interest rates and compounding. They don't understand opportunity cost, so they make financial decisions based on emotion and what feels affordable in the moment, not on math and long-term outcomes. They see a monthly payment they can afford and they sign up, not realizing they're committing to years of wealth destruction.
Second, instant gratification. We live in a culture that prioritizes immediate pleasure over long-term success. People want the nice car now, the big house now, the expensive vacation now. They don't want to wait. They don't want to save. They don't want to delay gratification, so they use debt to have things before they can actually afford them. This is backwards. Debt should be used to acquire assets that build wealth, not to consume things you can't afford. Third, social pressure. Everyone around you is financing cars, buying homes they can barely afford, going into debt for weddings and vacations. It's normalized. If everyone's doing it, it must be okay, right? Wrong. The fact that bad financial behavior is common doesn't make it smart. It just means most people are making the same mistakes. Don't follow the crowd off the cliff. Fourth, marketing and predatory lending. Banks, car dealerships, credit card companies, they all want you in debt because that's how they make money. They make it easy. They make it attractive. They emphasize low monthly payments and hide the total cost. They prey on financial ignorance. They're not your friends. They're businesses trying to make a profit off your poor decisions. Fifth, lack of planning. Most people don't have financial goals. They're not working toward anything specific. They're just going through life, reacting to circumstances. So when they need a car, they finance whatever looks good. When they want something, they put it on a credit card. There's no strategy, no long-term thinking, no plan, just short-term decisions that accumulate into long-term financial stress. The wealthy avoid all these traps. They educate themselves about money. They delay gratification, they ignore social pressure, they see through marketing, and they have clear financial goals that guide their decisions. This allows them to use debt strategically when it makes sense and avoid it when it doesn't. Here's the test for any debt. Will this make me richer or poorer in 5 years? If you borrow money to buy a rental property that cash flows, in 5 years you'll be richer. You'll have built equity, collected cash flow, and benefited from appreciation and tax advantages.
If you borrow money to buy a new car in 5 years, you'll be poorer. You'll have made 60 to 70 payments, the car will be worth half what you paid, and you'll have nothing to show for it but a depreciating asset and less wealth. Most people never ask this question. They ask, can I afford the monthly payment? That's the wrong question. The right question is, will this increase or decrease my net worth over time? If the answer is decrease, and you're not wealthy enough to absorb the loss without caring, don't do it. So, what do you do with this information? How do you start using debt correctly instead of incorrectly? Here's your action plan. Step 1. Eliminate all bad debt. If you have credit card balances, car loans, personal loans, any debt that's not attached to an appreciating or income-producing asset, make a plan to pay it off as fast as possible. Cut spending, increase income, throw every extra dollar at this debt. Get it gone. This is your top priority. You cannot build wealth while bad debt is draining you. Step 2. Build an emergency fund. Once your bad debt is gone, save 3 to 6 months of expenses in a high-yield savings account. This is your safety net. This prevents you from going back into bad debt when unexpected expenses arise, and they will arise. Life happens. Be prepared. Step 3. Start investing. With bad debt gone and an emergency fund in place, you can start building wealth. Max out retirement accounts. Build a taxable investment portfolio. Invest in yourself through education and skill development. Focus on acquiring assets that generate returns. Step 4. Only then consider good debt. Once you have a solid foundation, you can start looking at using leverage to accelerate wealth building. Rental properties, business loans, investment opportunities, but only if you understand what you're doing and only if the math works conservatively. Don't rush this step. Many people build substantial wealth without ever using leverage. It's optional, not required.
Step 5. Never go back to bad debt. Once you've escaped, stay escaped. Pay cash for cars. Pay off credit card balances every month. Don't finance depreciating assets. If you can't afford to buy it outright, you can't afford it. Save up and pay cash. This discipline alone will make you wealthier than most people. This is the path. It's not complicated. It's not easy, especially at first when you're paying off bad debt and building your foundation, but it works. Follow this path, and in 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, you'll be in a completely different financial position than if you keep doing what you're doing now. The choice is yours. You can keep using debt the way most people do and stay broke, or you can use it the way wealthy people do and build real wealth. Same tool, different outcome. It all comes down to understanding the difference between good debt and bad debt and having the discipline to act on that understanding. Good debt puts money in your pocket. Bad debt takes money out. It's that simple. Credit cards are bad debt if you carry a balance, neutral if you pay it off monthly. Car loans are almost always bad debt. Student loans are good debt if they increase your earning potential, bad debt if they don't. Step 5. Never go back to bad debt. Once you've escaped, stay escaped. Pay cash for cars. Pay off credit card balances every month. Don't finance depreciating assets. If you can't afford to buy it outright, you can't afford it. Save up and pay cash. This discipline alone will make you wealthier than most people. This is the path. It's not complicated. It's not easy, especially at first when you're paying off bad debt and building your foundation, but it works. Follow this path, and in 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, you'll be in a completely different financial position than if you keep doing what you're doing now. The choice is yours. You can keep using debt the way most people do and stay broke, or you can use it the way wealthy people do and build real wealth. Same tool, different outcome. It all comes down to understanding the difference between good debt and bad debt and having the discipline to act on that understanding. Good debt puts money in your pocket. Bad debt takes money out. It's that simple. Credit cards are bad debt if you carry a balance,
neutral if you pay it off monthly. Car loans are almost always bad debt. Student loans are good debt if they increase your earning potential, bad debt if they don't. Investment leverage is good debt if used conservatively on cash-flowing assets, dangerous if used speculatively or on depreciating assets. Most people get this wrong. They take on massive amounts of bad debt for things that don't build wealth: cars, consumer goods, lifestyles they can't afford. Then they wonder why they're broke. Meanwhile, wealthy people minimize bad debt, use good debt strategically, and build fortunes. You now know the difference. What you do with this knowledge is up to you. Start by eliminating bad debt. Then build your foundation. Then, if it makes sense, use good debt to accelerate your wealth building. But never, ever go back to financing depreciating assets and lifestyles you can't afford. If this video changed how you think about debt, hit that like button. If you want more real financial education that actually works, subscribe to this channel and turn on notifications. Most people will watch this, agree with everything, and then go finance a new car next month because that's what everyone does. Don't be most people. Be the person who understands money and uses it to build wealth, not destroy it. Now go fix your debt situation. Eliminate the bad. Build your foundation. Use the good strategically when you're ready. Your future self will thank you. I'll see you in the next one.